police chief has warned that the cost of living crisis could lead to an increase in crime.
So Andy Cook says officers should use their discretion when deciding whether to prosecute people who steal to eat, and suggested that they should instead be signposted to food banks. Well, joining us now to discuss this and the crisis generally is Sylvia Simpson, who runs a debt advice charity, and former Chief Superintendent for the Met Police, Dal Babu. I mean, there you are, former Chief Superintendent for the Met Police. I know that you're also very involved in food banks, so you see both sides of it. What does your gut feel the second that you heard him say that?
Well, he's a hugely respected individual. I think he has talked a lot about effective policing, about making sure that people who are burgled go to houses and help individuals. I think this is common sense. We seem to be in a Dickensian situation where you go into a supermarket and you have tags on nappies. You have tags on steaks and pieces, because people are taking things. Not because they're criminals, because they're actually desperate.
So, sorry, Dal, can I just qualify? Are you saying that what Andy Cook is saying is common sense, that there should be discretion about people having to steal to eat?
There's discretion about dealing with individuals, some individuals who are stealing in order to feed their children.
What about the business owners?
Is there something different, though, about the fact that it's common sense? And indeed, we've had people contact us saying this sort of happens already. You know, if they can see a situation, they try and deal with it and use their discretion, because, you know, police officers know their community very often. Is there a difference between knowing that happens and him in his position, new in the post, saying it? Because what signal does that send to everybody else?
Well, I think Andy's been very, very clear. This is not a carte blanche for people to go in and, you know, if you want a pack of 12 cans of lager, you know, he's not talking about that. He's talking about the situation where people are so desperate that they are taking food to feed their family, to feed their children. And so it's a very, very clear, specific area. And I think police officers do use their discretion. And often police officers will, particularly new police officers, will be in a situation where they will be on limited money. So a new police officer takes home £1,200, you know, so they will know about the challenges that
it is. Sylvia, so you work for a debt advice charity, so you know how bad it is at the moment. What are you seeing? Have you ever experienced anything like it?
No, I've been involved in money advice, excuse me, since 1996, and this is the worst I've ever seen it. And I know that there's more to come. We've seen since January to April a 400% increase in people contacting us for help. So that's telling us how busy it is. And we're getting a lot of people where they can't pay their rent. There's evictions, there's no money for food. They've been sanctioned, and we work very closely with food banks. But quite often, some of our food banks are only open once or twice a week. So people have to wait until they get there.
And it's very, very tough. What do you think about the idea that this statement that, you know, that discretion should be used, and that maybe that's happening in a way anyway? Because of course, the shopkeepers, they also are facing a cost of living crisis. Maybe some of the big brands we've all heard of can absorb it, but the smaller shops can't. They're still in a struggle. Is it a dangerous road to go down, or is it a useful one?
It's a dangerous road to go down, because it depends on the discretion of the police, I suppose, when they actually start talking to individuals about this thing. I think it's really important that the police work with local services like ours, and they, you know, send people for free advice so they don't have to pay for it, because we will help people maximise their income and get everything that the government is obliged to be paying them. And so,
do you quite often find that people don't really understand how much opportunity there is or options that they do have when it comes to sort of claiming benefits or making the most of their opportunity?
A lot of people don't know. And we empower people by sharing that information with them and showing them what to do. But some of the benefit forms, for example, if you've got an illness and you need to apply for personal independent payment, they are very complicated and complex to complete, so people don't bother.
We've had this email in from Dal, from Jenny, who said, I emailed food banks and local charities. I got no help and no reply, so I had to steal food. I was caught, I was arrested, I was put in a police car. I explained to the police my situation. The police took the cuffs off me and no further action was taken. This was because of the benefit system not paying us for 6 weeks. So as to your point, police are already using their discretion. They're already listening carefully. But I guess one of the concerns is when you hear someone as prominent as Andy Cook and as high profile saying something like this, the worry is that that allows and that gives other people the opportunity to say, well, maybe I can blame that. Maybe I can blame my petty criminality on the fact that I'm desperate to eat and I'm desperate to pay for my family to eat and I can't afford it. And it leads to sort of more crime and a surge in crime, and that crime is against the whole of society.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid point. And I think, you know, to Kate's point around shopkeepers, you know, they're feeling the pinch as well. But I think this is very, very specific. This is about food poverty, and police officers will use their discretion. I've used my discretion. I've de-arrested individuals once I find out what the situation is. But Andy Cook has been very, very specific. He's talked about people who are facing food poverty, and he's talked about them being directed to charities, to children's services, to food banks. I volunteer in a food bank. I see teachers and nurses coming in. Yeah. You know, this is a very, very different situation to anything I've ever seen before.
We talked with Kit Mulhouse earlier about this interview that Nick Ferrari did on his breakfast show on LBC with Vicky Knight. She's a DC from North Wales Police. She says she earns £40,000 a year. She takes home £2,300 a month, after paying her mortgage, her car insurance, her food shopping, her petrol, and her 13-year-old's bus fare to school. She has nothing left at the end of the month. There was a real misconception that it's only the people who are struggling, who are on the lowest wage, that actually really can't cope at the moment. Because that's
this is a detective constable. This is relatively
£40,000 is considerably above the the average wage in the country.
Yeah, I mean, Vicky Knight also talked about new police officers. So a new police officer takes home £1,200. So you imagine how much of a struggle that is to try and pay your rent, to try and actually travel to work.
£1,200 a month, is that?
So that's your take-home, £1,200 a month. Yeah. And I think what's happened is the amount of money that new police officers earn has been reduced. So there's a real challenge here. So a lot of police officers who come to these circumstances where there's food poverty will really understand the situation.
Can I ask you, Sylvia, I'm sure you're conscious in your position to not get party political, but from your view, what should the government do right now?
Well, certainly, if there's anything that they could do right now, with the utility suppliers, maybe they can work with utility suppliers and look at social tariffs, for example. So if you are on a really low income or you need electricity all day, every day to look after a loved one, then maybe there's a social tariff that they could bring in. So maybe the government could work with the energy companies and start looking at that for the people on the lowest income. The £20 uplift back to universal credit, we know it costs, but it is what it is. Yeah. You know, it's only going to get worse unless there's any intervention. So they've got to step up.
But something really targeted like that feels like it could be really tangible. You're at the front line and you know that would make a difference.
It would. Yeah.
And Dal, have you noticed that with the food bank work that you're doing now, that there is an increasing demand and people are getting more desperate? I have heard anecdotally, I hear people saying that people are coming into the food banks, they're taking advantage of the food and then they're seen selling the food down the line because they're sort of, you know, they're using that as an opportunity to make money themselves. Have you had any experience of that?
Yeah, I've not seen that. I mean, what I have seen is that people have a lot of shame when they come to food banks. I've seen teenagers who turn up and they're desperately embarrassed about having to go there. And it's little things, you know, treats. People aren't able to afford treats for children. You know, a bit of chocolate and ice cream, those kind of things. So the food bank is trying to give, as well as the basics, is to try and give those kind of little treats that we all like to give.
Bring some joy, which helps you cope with everything else, doesn't it? Goodness me, good to talk to both of you this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Sylvia.